Have you ever caught yourself imagining a conversation that never actually happened? Maybe you're in the shower, walking alone, or lying in bed at night, and suddenly your mind creates a completely detailed scene. You're arguing with someone, explaining something perfectly, or finally saying the thing you never got to say. The strange part is none of it is real, but the emotions feel completely real. You might feel relief or anger or even a quiet satisfaction from a moment that only ever existed inside your head. And if you do this often, you've probably wondered at some point why your brain keeps doing it. Most people assume it's just harmless daydreaming, random thoughts, the mind wandering. What researchers found when they actually studied this habit is something most people are not prepared to hear. And the surprising part is not what it says about your anxiety. It's what it says about the way your brain processes other people. But before we get there, you need to understand something about what's physically happening while these scenarios run. In 2010, researchers at Carnegie Mellon published findings on mental simulation and satiation. Participants vividly imagined eating a specific food 30 times in sequence before actually eating it. Not smelling it, not looking at it, just imagining it in detail repeatedly. They ate significantly less afterward. Their brains had processed the experience so thoroughly through imagination that the real thing felt like something already done. A separate line of research in sports psychology and motor rehabilitation found that people who mentally rehearsed physical movements activated nearly identical neural pathways to those who physically performed them. Two different fields, two different methods. The same underlying result. Your imaginary scenarios are not neutral. Every time your mind runs one, something is spent. The argument you rehearsed 12 times before finally having it, your body entered that conversation already carrying the emotional weight of a conflict it had technically already survived. The success you've imagined so many times it feels familiar. The reward your brain expected from actually reaching it has already been partially paid out in advance for something that hasn't happened yet. You are not escaping your emotions by running these scenarios. You are pre-spending them. That's the first thing most people never realize about this habit. Here's the second thing, and this one is harder to accept. Most people assume the ones who do this most are the most anxious, the most avoidant, the least equipped to handle real life. Some research in social cognition suggests a more complicated picture. Studies on what psychologists call empathic accuracy, the ability to correctly track what someone else is thinking or feeling in real time, have found that people who engage in frequent mental modeling of others sometimes perform better on certain interpersonal tasks. The caveat matters here. This is not a universal rule. Individual variation is significant, but for at least some people, this habit appears to be a byproduct of a mind that processes other people deeply, not a sign of one that is struggling. The brain that keeps rehearsing conversations may, in certain cases, be the same brain that reads real people unusually well. That reframe is worth sitting with, but it comes with something most people never see coming. Because over time, the imaginary version starts quietly winning. Not all at once, gradually, the conversation in your head ends cleanly. You say what you needed to say. The other person responds the way they should. Everything resolves. Real conversations don't work that way. They go sideways. You lose your train of thought. The other person reacts in a way you didn't expect. The outcome lands somewhere you didn't prepare for. So the mind drifts back to where it has control, to where the ending is already written. And real life becomes slowly and almost imperceptibly slightly less compelling than the version your brain already ran. Here's what almost nobody identifies without it being named directly. The scenarios that keep returning are not random. They cluster around the same people, the same unresolved moments, the same version of being finally understood or seen clearly. That's not wandering. That's the mind circling something it couldn't finish. And those loops don't stop through more imagining. They stop when the real thing gets addressed. Which brings us to the part most people don't expect. The answer isn't to stop the scenarios. The system that generates them is the same system that makes you perceptive. You cannot remove one without losing the other. But here is the thing the imagination genuinely cannot do, no matter how many times the scenario runs. It cannot give you accurate information about another person. Your imagined version of someone is a model, built from observation, memory, and inference. It can be sophisticated, it can be close, but it is still a model, not the person. And every time you run a scenario with that model instead of talking to the actual human being, you are making decisions, forming conclusions, carrying emotions, based on a version of them that you constructed. The real conversation, with all its uncertainty and imperfection, gives you something imagination cannot: data, actual signal from the actual person, what they meant, how they feel, whether the thing you've been rehearsing was even close to what they were thinking. Sometimes that information changes everything. Sometimes the conversation you've imagined 100 times resolves in 30 seconds because the real person says something your model never would have predicted. That's what the mind was trying to get to the whole time. Not the perfect response, not control over the outcome. The actual answer, and the only place that lives, is outside the scenario.